Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell to Bell. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, and we have a phenomenal show for you guys this week, especially considering we missed last week. That's my bad. I came down with some food poisoning, wasn't able to record, but we are here to break down everything we saw on Monday Night Raw, especially with John Cena and his first appearance since turning heel at Elimination Chamber. And he was great. He was phenomenal. There were many memeable moments. There was a lot of great messaging from John Cena in his first promo as a bad guy in WWE. But I just can't shake the feeling that Cody Rhodes has one up on him as the two head to Glasgow, Scotland for next week's edition of Monday Night Raw. We'll lead off there, and then we will move over to AEW and talk about their World Championship, because it might be time for Jon Moxley to relinquish the belt, or the briefcase in this instance. He does take on Cope later tonight on AEW Dynamite for the AEW Championship. And then if he gets through that, it's a date with Swerve Strickland coming up. And I'll let you know where I think he should drop the belt and why I think that should be coming sooner rather than later. Then we'll close out the show by diving into 3 Mania feuds that are heading in completely different directions. Before we get started here, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Nick Belsky if you enjoy this content, or if you'd prefer the audio version, you can find us at Bell to Bell on Spotify. Let's kick things off with the same exact way that Monday Night Raw kicked off at 3 p.m. on Monday afternoon. It's going to take an adjustment here the next couple of weeks as the WWE is overseas and really put out these Monday Night Raws in the middle of the workday. But they led things off red hot in Belgium. John Cena comes out. He hits his regular music. Do, 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 do. And he comes out with the Belgium gear. He comes out slowly. You can tell this is a different version of John Cena. Not talking to Stu. Not throwing the last time is now towel into the stands. And he comes into the ring. And instead of going after Cody Rhodes on the mic, instead of explaining what he did and reacting to what he did, he essentially cut a promo on the fans saying, after 25 years of you people taking advantage of me, whether you are the Let's Go Cena people or the Cena sucks people, you took advantage of me. And at first, I was like, okay, this is a weird direction to go. We only have 3 weeks till WrestleMania. We have to build up this feud. You haven't been here for 2 weeks, and you started off by going after the fans. And then as he kept going, as he started pointing out certain things, you thought to yourself, this is the essential part of the story between Rhodes and Cena. John Cena said, I was in Cody Rhodes' position for so long, and nobody loved me. And even if you said you loved me, that was even worse than the people that said that you hated me. The entire promo was a masterclass. Now, it's something that I don't think we're going to see again. I think that it's going to be very different when Cena now turns his attention to Cody Rhodes. I think you're going to get, absolute burial type Cena the rest of the way to WrestleMania. But this felt like it was a necessary promo. And John Cena knocked it out of the park. He was flaming the fans. He was calling out the fact that they've been making fun of him with a invisible joke that is just not funny anymore. I don't agree with that, I should say. I still think it's extremely funny. But John Cena said the joke is up. It's not time for that anymore. It is my time to do what I want. And it was a great promo. But then, like I led off this show saying, it felt like what came next was even better. The dun-dun from Kingdom hit about as hard as I think it has hit since Cody Rhodes returned to WWE. I mean, I would put that up there right below his return initially at WrestleMania against Seth Rollins. It was that because everybody was expecting it to be Cody Rhodes, but the fact that he came back with Kingdom, that's why that is number 1. But at number 2 has to be right at the end of this promo from John Cena, and the face that Cena gave as soon as he heard those 2 notes hit. It was just perfection with just mannerisms, perfection with the actual promos, perfection with the way that these two just kind of complimented each other from that point onward. Crazy reaction from for Cody in Brussels. Cena's face, like I mentioned, was phenomenal. And then Cena is just lambasted by Cody Rhodes. Cody comes out and basically says, I don't know what you're talking about. These fans have been behind you for the longest time. Did you not see the reaction when you won the Elimination Chamber? Did you not see the reaction when we shook hands after the Elimination Chamber before the final boss even made his presence felt? And then John Cena, in a way that we have not seen before, or at the very least haven't seen much of before, felt resided. Said, listen, kid, like he was about to drop some knowledge on Cody Rhodes because maybe he pities Cody Rhodes because he sees himself in Cody Rhodes, that he thinks that the fans are now taking advantage of the American Nightmare. And Cody says, not a chance. I am not going to let you spew your bull crap anymore. He cuts Cena off. He dices up this version of John Cena and says, listen, you better go find the real John Cena, the John Cena that I was excited to face at WrestleMania, because this whiny bitch is not him. And that line, just like it did in the build-up to WrestleMania 40, that line hit like a shot of adrenaline straight to the veins. Cody knocked it out of the park, and I don't think he's going to get the best of the verbal altercations more often than not when going with Cena down the stretch here, but he certainly got one up in Brussels. Cena let it sit in. He didn't respond after that. He didn't say another word after Cody Rhodes cooked him and walked away with the title. Cena just sat there, looked around a little bit, and then slowly walked back to Gorilla to cap off 26 minutes of a masterclass in building a story between heel John Cena and superhero Cody Rhodes. I cannot wait for next week. I'm a little confused as to why all this is occurring on Monday Night Raw. I know at the end of the day why it is. It's because Netflix paid $5 billion. They're going to want the top storyline going into their first WrestleMania to be on their platform. But this is SmackDown's champion, right? Cody Rhodes is SmackDown's champion. So I'm a little confused as to why it's happening on Raw, but you know what? It's so good. I don't care. I really don't. So I cannot wait for next week. I cannot wait for Glasgow. The fact that John Cena went out to lead off the show in his first appearance since turning heel and got one of the biggest negative reactions that we have seen in not just 2025, but in a very long time. WWE, that was confirmation that y'all hit it out of the park with this one. I loved everything about that segment on Monday. John Cena coming out to his regular gear, to his regular song, and saying, you guys get nothing. Because I was on this show with Zachary Smith 2 weeks ago, the last time we had an episode, saying, well, he's been ready for this. He said back in the mid-2010s that he had new music, he had new looks, he had new everything picked out for whenever he turned heel, and he just didn't get to use it. I thought he would kind of update it, dust it off, and bring it out, but it's even better that he said, you know what? We could take the risk of having a new heel theme and people thinking, oh, it's kind of crappy. And considering the thought processes and the beliefs and the discussion and the discourse surrounding current WWE themes, the new ones at least, I think it's pretty safe to say that it was a good decision to say, let's go with what works. We know that this is a theme song that is going to hit every single time. And the fact that he could explain it as saying, listen, you wanted something new. You're not getting anything from me, not even a heel theme, not even a heel attire. You're getting John Cena the way he wants to portray himself. And I loved it. So from start to finish, like I said, 26 minutes of a pure masterclass by the WWE, getting us all super excited for what is next for their grandest prize in their organization. Speaking of grandest prizes in organizations, let's talk about AEW. And I'm not going to go for 9 minutes just basically waxing poetic about the WWE championship and then bury the AEW championship. But it does feel like it is time for Jon Moxley to relinquish that belt, if I can get the word out. His title match at Revolution was awful. And that's not all on him. right? That's a lot to do with booking. That's a lot to do with the fact that it is a pay-per-view that was headlined by some of the most exhilarating, in their prime wrestlers that we have the opportunity to watch nowadays. And it was closed out by Jon Moxley, who is a low event main eventer, meaning he's not going to do the high flying stuff. He's not going to do the big crazy spots. He's going to do a technical wrestling match against Adam Copeland. And it just feels like at this stage of his career, Copeland can tell a story, but once you get to the final match, I don't know if he can deliver at a main event level anymore, which stings me to my soul because Edge was my favorite wrestler throughout my entire childhood and throughout my adolescence. Adam Copeland at Revolution just didn't look to have it. Now, maybe that was storytelling, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, and I shouldn't have this conversation before what we see tonight on AEW Dynamite, but it was just a slow-paced match. The crowd was gassed from what they had seen throughout the remainder of the night and had nothing left for this. And then you have the Christian contract cash-in, and it just felt like a Hail Mary. It felt like Tony Khan was sitting in the back saying, this is not going well between these two. We need to do something about it. And they threw the entire Christian thing in on the fly. Now, I'm not saying it was. I have no inside information. But as a viewer, it's just simply how it felt. It felt like they needed something to make this match a little bit more memorable. So they threw in the contract cash in and they allowed Cope to not take the fall so they could have a rematch and have a redo on the end of an episode of AEW Dynamite. But again, it just feels like after that entire story, and it culminates tonight, it feels like it's time for AEW to move on with its highest prize. I mean, Timeless Tony Storm said it best last week. The other world championship is in a briefcase, for God's sakes. I think we've run out of having that be a storyline that is worthy of the top prize in the second best company in the entire wrestling industry when it's as hot as it's ever been. You look at Moxley's title reign as of this recording, 158 days, 4 defenses. That's not awful. I loved the storyline with Orange Cassidy, who was begrudgingly the face of the AEW locker room against Jon Moxley to start his reign. I thought that was a well-told story. I thought it was a well-paid-off match, and I thought that it was a really good start to Moxley's title reign, even though he was doing the whole belt in the briefcase thing, which I don't like in general. Then you had Orange Cassidy and Hangman and Jay White at World's End against Jon Moxley, and Moxley goes over again. Also, very much like this. Sets up Jay White being in and around the title the entire time, but not quite being able to be the guy to take it from Jon Moxley's grasp. It closes the storyline with Orange Cassidy, and it brings Hangman Page back into the main event scene. That, again, very good. Then you had the weird retention against Powerhouse Hobbs on TV. Okay, fine. And then you had what we saw at Revolution. So it feels like while every title reign can have its peaks and valleys, it feels like it started off really high. It started off extremely high whenever he took the belt off of Bryan Danielson, and everything that we saw after that match. It was stunning. It was stark. It grabbed your attention, and it made this faction, the Death Riders, led by Jon Moxley, feel dangerous. Since then, it's just started to decline slowly and slowly and slowly. And one of the biggest points of contention, this is my personal opinion, was whenever Jon Moxley said, Cope, you're not getting a title match. And it had to be Cope coercing a title match out of Jon Moxley. Because if Moxley's supposed to be this big bad guy, and the Death Riders are supposed to be this unstoppable force, why is he backing down from a 50-year-old? Why is he backing down from, I get it, a guy who has been in this industry and is well-respected, and you're trying to tell that storyline, but why is he saying, no, I'm not going to face you? And yet he was fine facing Orange Cassidy, Hangman Page, and Jay White. I just didn't like that. It didn't feel like it fit the story that they were trying to tell. And since then, of course, the Cope storyline has, just as the entire title reign, had his peaks and valleys. The way he was taking out the Death Riders one by one with concerto after concerto after concerto, the way that he changed it up and switched everything up with Wheeler Yuta, I thought was good. It was nice. It wasn't, just let's copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. They added a layer to the storyline with that, but the payoff just wasn't there. And to extend it another 10 days just didn't feel like it was a good enough payoff for the story that they were trying to tell. So at the end of the day, I like Jon Moxley. I've enjoyed his title reign to a certain extent, but it feels like AEW needs a different champion to lead the way here. It just so happens that this is the perfect time, matched with the perfect challenger to do so. AEW Dynasty is the time. Swerve Strickland is that challenger. Swerve has been the champion without the title. That is something that Cody Rhodes talked about a lot after he lost at WrestleMania 39. He was told by, if I'm remembering correctly, Paul Heyman, go be the champion without the title. It was either Paul Heyman or, ironically, it might have actually been John Cena. I can't remember which, but Cody Rhodes said, I believe, on Chris Van Vliet's podcast. That is exactly what Swerve has been since he dropped the title to Bryan Danielson. They went in a different direction with the world title in Jon Moxley. But with Swerve, he finished the Hangman feud. He lost it, but he finished the Hangman feud, and it was a glorious culmination to one of the best feuds, scratch that, the best feud in wrestling in recent memories. That's the best feud of 2024 into 2025. It's Hangman and Swerve. And then his work with Ricochet has also been fantastic. He's been the champion without the title. He's been the most must-watch act on AEW the entire time. And that is over Moxley. I would say right now that is over Will Ospreay. I would say that is over the return of Kenny Omega. Swerve Strickland is at the level, if not higher, than all of those acts right now in AEW. It's time. His first reign was the best we've seen post MJF's 400-day reign. Right? I think that's how you have to break down AEW championship reigns. It is everything pre and leading up to and including MJF's long reign and everything since. And the best we've seen, maybe outside of Danielson, but that was something that we knew was just going to be banger after banger. He's going to have a couple of really great matches, and then he's going to call it a day. Swerve Strickland has had the best reign. He was the best champion since MJF's reign. I think we need to see it again. I think it is time that we give the belt back to Swerve, that we get it out of the briefcase, for God's sakes, and we run with Swerve Strickland as the AEW champion throughout the summer, leading into All In Texas for the AEW World Championship. So that's just my thought. It feels like this Death Riders storyline has run its course, and it feels like Swerve is the perfect guy to take the belt off of him. Let's talk about a couple more WWE feuds that are building towards WrestleMania. We don't know if the payoff's going to be at WrestleMania for a couple of these, but these feuds are heading in completely different directions. I have no idea what to think about the WWE Tag Team Championships. Right now, it's the Street Profits. Good. That's a good tag team. That is a good champion. They defeat DIY on Friday Night Smackdown last week, and they win their first title in over 4 years. Long overdue, I should say. And they're a great tag team. And this attitude shift that they've had has worked perfectly. SmackDown has revived this tag division. Raw needs to take some notes. I've said that in the past. But I don't like the timing of this. If this would have happened at WrestleMania or on WrestleMania weekend, even if it's not on the Mania PLE in general, I would have loved it. I think it would have fit perfectly. But I don't understand the timing of shifting the belts from DIY to the Street Profits. They're trying to make this a very even division. And I get that. Pretty Deadly has gone from being jobbers and being just backstage segments to being number one contenders and earning those number one contenderships through winning matches. Motor City Machine Guns have been pretty strong and dominant since they joined the WWE. DIY was holding the championships, and the Street Profits had that credit behind them. I think everybody understood that the Street Profits, no matter whether they were winning or not, they were a strong tag team that could win and could get the belts at any given moment. And that's what we saw on Friday. But it just felt like when you look at this division, they're building the teams to be even. But at the same time, what does it matter if the belts just continuously get passed back and forth? I think that's what we've seen far too much since the split. Even though these teams and this division has been built so well, no one has defended those titles more than once since they were split at last year's WrestleMania. One defense is the most that any team has defended it, whether that is the Guerrillas of Destiny, whenever they were holding those during the Bloodline 2.0 storyline, whether it's DIY, whether it's Motor City Machine Guns. These teams are not defending the title, and it makes the title feel a little bit cheaper in my eyes. Now, at the end of the day, we are barreling towards a multi-team ladder match at WrestleMania. That's what I truly believe. We still have the Street Profits, who are your new champions, your 4-time tag team champions, and the fact that they won it makes me want them to win it and retain it at WrestleMania, but I digress on that point. That's for a different day. But you have the Street Profits, you have DIY getting back theirs, you have Pretty Deadly, who has a number one contenders match, but will probably get an opportunity to be on Mania because they've done good work. You have Los Garza, who's all of a sudden being booked stronger and stronger in that tag division. And then you have the Motor City Machine Guns, who are beloved by Triple H and the WWE. You throw in a returning Tonga Loa, if he does return with Tama Tonga, you have, 6 teams for a ladder match at WrestleMania? That's a lot of bodies, but I don't doubt that they would put on a heck of a show. I just want these titles to feel a little bit more important. I want these titles to be built up a little bit, similar to what we saw with Seth Rollins whenever he took over the World Heavyweight Championship in its renewed form. He built that title up to mean something by the time they reached WrestleMania 40. These titles were split. The division is being built, but it feels like the titles aren't being built along with it. And that's where I think my hangup is with the Street Profits beating DIY 3 weeks before WrestleMania. So we'll see what it ends up being. I believe they are planning on having Street Profits versus Pretty Deadly at some point for the title before WrestleMania, but you'd have to imagine that that's going to end with somebody interfering with, whether it's a disqualification or just an interference that takes the attention away from somebody, and the Street Profits hopefully retain. If this ends up being Pretty Deadly taking the titles off the Street Profits and we just continue to play hot potato with these belts, I will get very, very upset. The tag division is heating up in the on SmackDown. I'm just hoping that they can heat up those titles along with it. Speaking of titles that are heating up, though, let's talk a little bit about what we saw on Monday Night Raw in the main event. I've been pinning down the Intercontinental title match at Mania as a fatal 4-way. And that fatal 4-way was Bron Breakker, the champion, going in, Finn Balor, AJ Styles, and Logan Paul. One, because that's what I want to see. Those are 4 great wrestlers that would put on a heck of a fatal 4-way. And 2, that's what we had seen up to this point in the build towards Mania for Bron Breakker's Intercontinental Championship. We saw Breakker and AJ Styles kind of exchange words a little bit. We saw Breakker try to spear AJ Styles at one point. We saw Styles get the better of Bron Breakker and almost embarrass him whenever he knocked him out of the ring. Breakker threw his shirt at him and Styles just snagged it like he was Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers. Breakker never went back to that. He still hasn't gone back to that. And they are slowly building the AJ Styles versus Logan Paul conflict. So at this point, it almost feels like we're heading for 3 singles feuds, because AJ and Logan feel like they might be going to a one-on-one matchup at WrestleMania. It's similar to what we saw last year with AJ and the rising star that was LA Knight. Now it is AJ and Logan Paul who continues to ascend throughout this business. After Finn Balor lost, I would say somewhat clean on Monday night, he'll obviously have something to say about that. But Finn Balor was pinned 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. Maybe we're heading for Finn Balor versus Dominik Mysterio, because Mysterio is somebody who's done a lot of great work between last year's Mania and this year's Mania. And he's also somebody that's been on the card for a couple consecutive Manias. Don't think he's just going to be a manager at the grandest stage of them all. Maybe we're heading towards Balor versus Mysterio because, as we'll get into in a minute, they need something to heat up the Judgment Day. Since JD McDonough went down with an injury, the Judgment Day story has been a little all over the place. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then after that match, after Breakker versus Balor in what was a solid matchup, what was a nice retention of the Intercontinental title, we see Penta come out. Now, earlier in the show, Penta ended his feud with Ludwig Kaiser. He went over. He beat Kaiser in the straight fight, and then immediately after that, had an interview ringside and said, I'm going after the Intercontinental Championship. Seems like that's a clean break for Penta. And now he's going after Bron Breakker. And he reiterated that fact by coming out to help Breakker against the Judgment Day post-victory and then holding the title and looking straight in Breakker's face, and we get the stare down. I've been saying since Penta came onto the scene early in January that they are building him with a rocket ship strapped to his boots. And that's exactly what we're seeing. He goes through the first couple of weeks where it's just showcasing his talents, picking up some victories on Monday Night Raw, beating guys like Pete Dunne multiple times, beating Chad Gable in his debut, beating Ludwig Kaiser, and then suffering his first loss, but not taking the pin to build up this matchup with Ludwig Kaiser. He puts him down, he ends the feud, and now he's established as one of the best in the mid-card. And now it feels like he has built some momentum before going up against Bron Breakker. And now we have that stare down that makes me think maybe, just maybe, this is the matchup. This is the title. This is Bron Breakker in his first Mania. That is something that I have now said that I thought it was going to be Breakker Styles. I thought it was going to be Breakker Balor. I thought maybe it was the Fatal 4-Way. I'd like to not give up on that, but it feels like we're heading in an opposite direction. It feels like whoever you put with Bron Breakker, we're all going to get excited about. And I think that just speaks to the level of star that they have on their hands with their Intercontinental Champion. So if we're looking at 3 singles matches, one, I don't know how they're going to fit all of these matchups and all of these feuds on the WrestleMania weekend. That'll be a very difficult position for Triple H and the booking of the company. But if we're going Penta versus Breakker, that's going to be an insane matchup. Insane matchup. And whoever wins, nobody is going to be upset with that one. Styles versus Paul is interesting. They're selling it as the AJ Styles worked so hard and so long to get to this level, and Logan Paul just kind of walked in the front door without ever doing it and was given opportunity after opportunity. Sure, you could tell a good story with that. There's a good why behind why those two would match up. And then you have Finn Balor and Dom. The problem with that is I don't know which of them can take the pin at WrestleMania. Finn Balor has main evented Monday Night Raw on Netflix 3 times now. And yet it feels like he is no closer to be taken seriously in any title picture than guys like AJ, guys like Logan, guys like Penta. Balor needs to start stacking some wins. And honestly, post SummerSlam, the momentum hasn't been great for the entire faction of the Judgment Day. That would be a great way to break Finn from Judgment Day, let them reset, because right now the heart of the Judgment Day is Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and Dom Mysterio. Finn's out to lunch. Feels like he's on his own. Feels like he's on an island. JD will have to see what happens when he comes back. And Carlito is what Carlito is. He is the comic relief that keeps on giving. But it feels like we're heading, instead of this big, massive, fatal 4-way with all this incredible talent, feels like we might be heading for 3 singles matches. Or I talked about the multi-man, multi-team ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Maybe those SmackDown Tag Team Championships just happen to be on SmackDown that weekend and not get the Mania card, and we end up with a 6-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. Everything's on the table, right? This is a windy road. This is a windy build to WrestleMania. It's been a weird build to WrestleMania, and it might just get even weirder as we continue to try to pin down what they're going to do with the Intercontinental title. I want to close off today's episode talking a little bit about Jey Uso, because if you look on the internet, a lot of people are unhappy. If you look at the actual arenas, people are fine with what they're seeing from Gunther versus Jey Uso. But this story, to me, is losing momentum. It's hard to maintain that for, what would it end up being, 3.5 months? Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble on the first weekend of February. We are in the third weekend of March and still have a month to go before WrestleMania. But it feels like we're losing steam, and it feels like WWE doesn't have many ideas left in the hopper, or at the very least, they're saving them all up for the last 4 weeks. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping this was all just slowing things down because they had so much time to kill, and now they'll kick things into high gear. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if you look at this feud to this point, Jey Uso wins the Royal Rumble, a decision that has been discussed and picked apart left and right for the past month and a half. But then you have the 1 to 2 week phase of Jey making his decision. Well, I could go with Gunther, and Gunther saying, don't go with me. I'm going to punish you if you choose me. And then going over to SmackDown and saying, Cody, what do you think? What do you think about me versus you? And then the next week, he makes his decision. He gets beat down, but he says, you know what? It's going to be me versus Gunther. So, okay, 2 weeks. That's Jay's decision. The next 2 weeks, we get Gunther's singles squashes. He goes out and he absolutely destroys Akira Tozawa, and then he destroys Otis. Why? Because at the end of the day, his nickname is the Ring General. He's not the Mic General. We need to see him in action. That's what we got. I enjoyed whenever they pivoted to that, because that felt like something that we needed to see for Gunther to build this Mania match, for Gunther to build this bully storyline, is he needed to bully some people, not just Jey Uso, but he needed to bully other people in the locker room, specifically people that would get behind Jey Uso and make him feel that he can actually accomplish this. So yeah, that worked. That was a couple of weeks that they were able to draw that one out. And now they've gone to Jey single squashes, which if you're trying to make Jey the underdog, I don't know if squashing Grayson Waller and then beating Austin Theory in 30 seconds is the way to go. But I digress on that point. I guess it mirrors what we had with Gunther. It shows that, hey, maybe Gunther is looking at this as an actual challenge, because not only is Gunther able to squash people, but Jey Uso is at that level. He is in the main event. He is at that other level than Waller and Theory. But now that we're getting Jey Uso and a surprise tag partner against Waller and Theory next Monday night, it feels like we've lost the plot. It does. It feels like Jey Uso is spending more time on TV going after Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, or maybe not going after, but fending off Grayson Waller and Austin Theory than he is fending off Gunther, who's his actual WrestleMania opponent. I think, like I mentioned, it just feels like we've lost the plot. Gunther is the bully. And yeah, at the end of all of these segments, what is the one constant? Gunther trying to beat down Jey Uso. And that's what he said he was going to do 8 weeks ago. But at the same time, it's repetitive. And whenever all of these phases of this storyline are drawn out for 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it starts to get a little stale. And I think that's the way I'm feeling. Now, with that said, there are 4 more weeks to WrestleMania. I am not burying this feud. I am not burying this match at WrestleMania for a couple of reasons. One, you have 4 weeks. It's time to turn up the heat, and I bet you they do. I bet you WWE said, listen, a lot of that multi-week phase crap was to get us to this point. We had a lot of time to build this match, and we didn't have a whole lot of ideas when it came to, can we have 13 different stories told in 13 different weeks between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So with 4 weeks to go, it's time to get creative. It's time to turn up the heat. I believe that they can still do that. Now, this was the first match made. Before Charlotte versus Tiffany, this was the first match made. It's been passed up by 3 others, right? John Cena and Cody Rhodes now sits atop the card at WrestleMania, at least in my eyes. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk sits higher on the list than this world title match. And that one doesn't have a strap. Bianca Belair, Io Sky, and Rhea Ripley sits above this. And you could make the case for Charlotte and Tiffany. They've had to face very similar issues that Jey Uso and Gunther have had to face, and that it's been a long time since that match was made, and they have a long time to build the story and keep interest in the story. But I think they've done it at a higher level on SmackDown than they've done it on Raw with the World Heavyweight Championship. So again, I think they have time to fix this. I think they have time to build this as good as it needs to be. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of faith in, can Gunther do what Gunther does and make his money and make his hay in that ring at WrestleMania? I have faith in that. I think once Mania comes around, even if you're not happy with the storyline, there is going to be a great payoff. Even if Jey Uso wins, there's going to be a great payoff, and I think there's going to be a great match. People forget, because of Jey Uso's match with Jimmy last year, that he is somebody who, when the stage gets the brightest, can put up a unforgettable matchup. He did it at WrestleMania 39 in a tag match with Jimmy, Sammy, and Kevin. And he's in there with somebody that is going to give him an opportunity to do the exact same thing. If Jey Uso brings his A game, it's going to be a phenomenal matchup, and it's going to be something that a lot of people look back on and say, the build wasn't great, but the match at the end and the payoff was absolutely tremendous. So that's my thoughts on those three. Jey Uso and Gunther losing a little bit of momentum. I'd like to see them be able to pick things up a little bit. Penta gunning for the Intercontinental title is interesting. Didn't have it on my bingo card, and now I'm completely in the dark on what is next for those 6 people. Penta, Bron, AJ, Logan, Finn, and Dom. What is next for them? I don't know. I'm excited to see it. And then, of course, Street Profits and the SmackDown Tag Division. Just got to keep our eyes on it. They've done a great job to this point, as my cat makes a cameo at the end of this episode. But we're 4 weeks away. I'm intrigued by a lot of what's going on. I don't know what to expect, and I don't think you do either. It's going to be a great stretch run down to WrestleMania 41. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bell to Bell. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Nick Belsky if you enjoy our content, or you can catch us on Bell to Bell on Spotify. We'll see you guys next time.